All right. Welcome to the inaugural Marco Boxing Live. We're going to just talk boxing, take call ins, take callers, chop it up, all that stuff. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring in today's co host, my reoccurring co host, Mr. Hayden Cowie. What's up, Hayden?
What's going on, brother?
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right. Let me do it this way. Oops. Wait, hold on. So I'm still getting to use. All right, there we go. So today's topic, we're going to talk about Floyd Mayweather. So as everybody knows, Floyd had, you know, two different careers, one might say, right? He had, as he started as Pretty Boy Floyd, right? So he started after he won a silver medal. What did he win? Silver or did he win a
He got
bronze?
silver. Yeah. And most people watching would agree that he got jobbed in that one. He should have had the gold.
He should have had the gold. Right. Okay. Hold on. Now I'm gonna put the link in the chat. So anybody once we start taking guests, and how do I pin this? This is my first time doing all this, so you got to bear with me, everybody. It's my first time doing it, so I'm trying to pin this. But anyway, it's in the chat. Okay, so Floyd Mayweather wins the silver medal, and he turns pro, and he had this $1 million smile. So he went with the moniker Pretty Boy Floyd, right? So why does that matter? Well, when he fought Oscar De La Hoya, right around that period, he kind of switched around and he became Money Mayweather, right? And that matters because he totally changed how he fought. So we're talking about more so how he fought. We can get into other things as well, but so what do you think, Hayden, were the first major differences? Start light, and we'll get into more, what's the word? Things. What were the major differences between Money Mayweather and Pretty Boy?
I would have to say that I think, first of all, I think that the monikers changed because I think they knew that the style had to change. Stylistically, he had to change. Floyd ended up getting some hand injuries, a few injuries there that I think he knew that if he fought with the same aggression he did as Pretty Boy Floyd, um, he wouldn't have longevity in the sport. And realized, and I had kind of an impromptu interview myself with Jay Prince, who said that was the biggest mistake of his entire career, was letting Floyd buy his way out of that contract. I think at that point Floyd was becoming a little bit more financially and business savvy, right?
Okay.
So his
Okay.
whole persona was changing at that point, and I
Right.
think he was looking at it himself as a business.
Okay.
And I think stylistically he realized, hey, I have these injuries. I won't have longevity to make the money in the sport that I want to make in the long term if I keep fighting this way. So I
Okay.
think the first major change was the level of aggression.
Okay. Real quick, want to say what's up to the people in the chat. Joseph, what's up? The Mexican G, what is going on? Goat, what is up, my man? Michael DH, good to see you as well. I appreciate you guys being here. Remember, everybody, please hit the like button. Apparently, the way these damn algorithms work is the like button is engagement. I'm old, so I'm learning all this now, right? And the engagement pushes my content to show up in your feeds and to get more eyeballs on it, um, and help grow the channel. So please hit thumbs up. I want to get at least, God, I want to get at least 100 thumbs up tonight if possible, but we'll see. Anyway, okay, so and guys, the link is in the chat. If anybody wants to join and give us your opinion, please do so. Maria, what is up? Okay, so to me, the thing I think about when I think about Pretty Boy Floyd, right? I think about me. he had a mean streak to him,
Sure.
which kind of, I guess I'm summing it up kind of uh primitively, but he had a mean streak to him, right? Pretty uh Money Mayweather seemed to be more like a surgeon. Slow, very efficient with all of his movements, with everything he's done. Money Mayweather didn't seem as mean, but would you say he was more effective?
I don't think so. I think the level of opposition changed, right? As he became more experienced, more seasoned, he started going after bigger fish and became more tactical. I mean, the talent changed. It really did. The power changed, right? By the time he got up to a guy like Canelo, it's the same chin, right? I don't care, what you do. It's the same chin. So you're not going to go in there and take the same level of aggression back that you were from the opponents that you're going after so aggressively. I think, too, what we get oftentimes when we see a shift, we saw it in other fighters that got criticized, and Floyd got criticized as well, right? Um,
Right.
for the stylistic change. We saw it in Lennox Lewis. I like to call that being a lot more defensively responsible. He came out, he was really aggressive, level of opposition changed, stepped it up a little bit, and realized I can't take this kind of punishment. I'm sure he got his bell rung a few times to go, as the quality changed and realized, hey, it's time for me to be smart and fight smarter, not harder. And Floyd became a master of that.
Right. What's up, Teach? Uh, Maria, hello. Okay. Well,
Hey, Maria.
I think is that your Maria?
I think so.
Okay. Hello, Maria. Um, I think
Hola.
Pretty Boy Floyd was way more exciting. Could we agree on that?
Sure, sure. They're always more exciting when they're aggressive fighters, right? Because and especially to the casuals. I mean, even the more experienced guys, the veteran fans, the former fighters, inside innately we want to see the warrior spirit. We want to see combat. We want to see knockouts. We want to see people hurt, cut, staggered, or fighting through that stuff to win. So that was more exciting, but it's not as responsible. Again, for longevity, if you want to spend time in the sport, you're not going to be that kind of a warrior. You're going to
Right.
run. You're especially at that level. This is a
Right, right. I
multi-division
mean,
world champion.
apparently the reason, one of the main reasons for the style change was that he would hurt his hands repeatedly,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And you've been in there, we've been in there. When your hands hurt, you just can't punch as hard. You physically, your body just stops it from,
Or you
you
change it to another weapon. It goes from a punching weapon to a strictly defensive weapon.
okay. So, would you say that Money Mayweather's defense was different than Pretty Boy's defense?
Absolutely.
How
There were,
so?
early on, there were the pinings of that style of defense. The Philly shell wasn't as perfected until he decided to make that full switch. And it was an evolution, right? You'd see him throw the occasional elbow in there, and people thought he was trying to elbow his opponents. He was actually using that elbow and shoulder to block punches and come back with counters, right?
Right.
There were shoulder bumps and things like that. And then I think he realized rolling with the punches, bringing that arm up and across was really effective for him. And the guy has great eyes. He's got super reflexes. So although he got in there with guys that were definitely faster than him, Zab Judah comes to mind. His reflexes negated a lot of the speed of guys that were faster than him.
I mean, I don't think, and let's think about this. I don't think there's one performance as Money Mayweather that tops what he did to Diego Corrales or to Arturo Gatti.
For Agati, I have to agree.
I mean, there's very few performances in history of boxing of any fighter that I think has done what he did in either of those fights.
Yeah, those were lopsided victories in fights that we thought would be competitive. Look, I was a Diego Corrales fan, especially
He was favored. Diego was favored.
right, especially after his fight with Jose Luis Castillo. who we know was no slouch. To
They
see
fought. They fought before Castillo, didn't they? Or you mean Mayweather's fight with Castillo or Corrales?
Corrales, after when you go back and you watch the Castillo fight, you wonder how he was so competitive at that level against a guy like that, but it was so lopsided against Floyd. So you realize before even meeting Castillo, that Castillo, he was in trouble. He was in trouble with Floyd. Stylistically, they didn't match up as well, but you're not going to beat Floyd twice. Floyd is, he's a master of studying and putting, people accused him of cherry picking. I think he was just opportune in his picking, as you should be, right? When you're
Right.
ready for someone. I don't think he ducked people. I think he found the opportune time, studied people, looked at how they fought other people if he didn't have enough data on them, and then picked them at the right time. Castillo, we were fortunate enough to see a competitive fight the first time with
Right.
Floyd. And then he went back and studied and came back and it was lopsided.
I mean, didn't Floyd have an injury against Castillo the first time?
They claim he did. He never used it as an excuse, though.
No, he never said that, but
Right.
That's the only fight that I think he actually lost. The first one.
Decidedly. Again, I'll have to defer to the Zab Judah fight, and it could have been a draw. I think that could have been at least a draw.
Zab?
Yeah. I think
Well,
Zab, for the first four and a half rounds, there was a knockdown that wasn't counted.
so if you count the knockdown, you give him 4 rounds and then 1-10-8. Is that a draw?
That's a draw. Then maybe one of the later rounds, I forget which one was close. So you could swing that one round that I remember. I've watched that fight at least 6 or 7 times. So, I'm not going to talk about the jumping up on the ring apron because that's still at the discretion of the referee. People, that should have been a disqualification for Floyd when his team jumped up onto the ring apron. That's at the discretion of the referee.
Yeah.
Look at the rules. So, you and I, we like to do it by the rules here. And so I think that fight could have been a draw. I think if I go back, I'd like to say that those were at least four solid rounds of Zab Judah, giving Floyd probably the most competitive rounds he had ever had in his career.
Absolutely. It was touching him up, looked faster, looked sharper, looked more aggressive, looked in control. I mean, it was his rhythm. He had the rhythm go. He had everything going.
He had it all going. And then Floyd made a few adjustments, but nothing that big. Zab lost focus. There are those that speak to his ADHD that he now manages. But, I thought looking at it, he had everything. He had everything if he had just pulled it out for 2 more rounds, I think he could have taken that fight. And Floyd was hurt in that fight. Wasn't hurt as badly as he was in maybe the Mosley fight. But
Mosley, I just did a video. Mosley, Corley, and
Chop Corley hurt him.
Arguably Maidana.
Maidana definitely rocked him a little bit, but not as cleanly as I think Mosley hurt him the worst. I've never seen
he literally went down and then picked himself up, grabbed.
Yeah. And I noticed, I was in looking at one of your previous podcast, and you were talking about his recuperative powers, and you've got to give that to Floyd. Floyd has been hurt a few times. I think Oscar De La Hoya caught him a couple of times, but he's a master of disguise, and he has tremendous recuperative powers.
Some great chin,
yeah. Some people, it's blasphemy to say that Floyd is less than perfect, but he's human, not superhuman. But you have to give him that credit, and that's what makes him a warrior. He may not seem like it. He may seem like just a businessman, but he is a warrior, and that's the business.
Right. Yeah, he was something else, and I often wonder if his hands weren't hurt, right? Do you think he would have? Because do you think he would have stayed with that style? Because as fighters get older, they're kind of forced to abandon all the energy used, and they have to be more efficient with their energy, with their punches, with their movements. I mean, he slowed down so much as Money Mayweather, but was probably won all of his close fights. Well, wait, let's see this. So he had the one close fight against Castillo as Pretty Boy. then the rest of his close fights were what? Cotto and probably Maidana. Is that probably it?
Donna,
Oh,
yeah,
De La Hoya was actually close as shit too.
yeah, yeah.
So
But
the
again,
majority of his fights close were as Money Mayweather.
in the rematch, lopsided, a
Both,
landslide.
both. Right, right. Maidana lopsided, and of course Castillo. Well, Castillo was pretty boy, but Cotto was close-ish, right?
Cotto was close. Um, let's see, Castillo, Cotto, De La Hoya
De La Hoya was really close.
was really
Like
close.
people don't talk
There
about
are
that. That
people
was
that De La Hoya won that fight. I don't think De La Hoya won that fight, but I think De La Hoya lost that fight for himself. I don't think it was so much what Floyd did as what Oscar didn't do, or what maybe he enticed Oscar not to do, psychologically. So, and that's another aspect of it for him. He's a veteran of the game and knows how to get inside of your head pretty well, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, man. That fight was so close. But Floyd in that fight looked kind of gun shy. Like he kind of did what Roy Jones started doing later in his career, just lay on the ropes and kind of just
That
let the
was
guys
deep.
throw.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. I wonder why.
I think that was a smart option for him. Um, in some respect, it was a bit of rope-a-doping for him in that fight with De La Hoya. I think De La Hoya is one of the fastest combination throwers of his era and still had plenty of hand speed. Oscar De La Hoya throws consistent power in both hands. As we know, he was a southpaw previously. And we know Floyd's had a little difficulty, even in the early stages with Ortiz. You saw Ortiz giving him a little bit of the business from that southpaw stance. Zab from that southpaw stance. Chop Chop from the
Mm,
southpaw. So when you look at it,
yeah.
knows Oscar thinks in southpaw dimensions and gives great angles and has power in both hands, right? And I think it was a great option for him to learn how to use the ropes, how to press back into the ropes to take away a little bit of the math, the arithmetic Oscar did on impact of punches and take the sting off of some of them. You look at Floyd, he knows how to use every inch of that rig. He knows not the corners, but using the sides. And if he gets into a corner, you'll see him use really nice, curvy movements to not get trapped in a sharp corner.
Right, right. Right. His It seemed like his killer instinct though kind of diminished as he got older.
Yeah,
But that's probably just a result of him having to conserve energy, right?
yeah, yes. That and the fact that, when you switch over from such an aggressive finishing style to a style where you're invested in the fight, you're invested in the counter fight, you're invested in the defense, right? You definitely are on a budget for energy, right? Especially given the size of some rings, especially given the fact that more often than not, if we go back and look in history, moving up, and most of his opponents were bigger and stronger. He, maybe even more powerful, we should say, right? Bigger, stronger, more powerful. So he used speed, he used reflexes, he used defense. And a lot of times that requires quite a bit of energy, the density
Right.
of the, how much it's going to take out of your legs. People called him a runner. I don't think he was a runner. I think he moved around. It's a hit and not get hit kind of game. And he was a counter fighter at that point, right?
Right,
So,
right.
you know,
I mean, and he,
punches, moving and firing.
he remained a counter puncher for the most part, but he would set a lot of traps. I mean, do you
Walk
think
people into, yeah.
do you think which version of him would have a better chance at beating Terrence Crawford?
Wow. I think it was probably the middle version of him where he was actually making the transition at the heaviest point of transition. You had the most balanced Floyd. Still a guy that was going to try to get you out of there and finish you, but still defensively responsible enough. A guy that, would walk a guy into traps. I don't know. Terrence Crawford is a complete package to me. And again, being able to give him that southpaw look could be a lot of trouble for Floyd. That would have been a great matchup. There are some guys out there. I wish I'd seen him fight. Stevie Johnson, a seasoned Paulie Malignaggi. That might have been a really
But
fast, competitive fight.
so,
Crawford,
but which
Crawford
version
has
would you
good stuff.
say? Which version would you say has a better chance to beat? Okay,
It's
first off,
got to be Money May. It's got to
Money
be
May.
early stages of Money May, where he's laying traps, where he's still fast, where
Does
he's.
he beat Crawford though?
I think he could. I think he's. Look, Crawford
You have
looks
to
like
pick one. You have a gun to your head. Who wins, Crawford or Money May?
got to go for Money Mayweather. And I stand there, gun or no gun. I stand on. I'm a little on the fence without the gun. I'm definitely planted on Mayweather, Money Mayweather, with the gun.
Okay.
And the reason why, we love fighters generationally, and we look at their opposition generationally. The kind of fighters that Floyd Mayweather beat, whether they were past their prime, before their prime, during their prime, his resume just can't be. You can't compare the two resumes.
Right.
Even generation for generation. He came out of boxing's golden age. The only thing that slowed him down in his popularity was that he was living in the shadow of Roy Jones Jr.
Somewhat. I mean, Roy was in '98. Mayweather was still kind of up and coming, or
Right.
was he? What year did he fight Corrales? That was the '90s, right? 90
It
something.
was. It was still the '90s. It was still the '90s.
Yeah, so that was his coming out party when Roy was already Roy.
Yeah, I think Corrales didn't pass away until 2000. Was it 2005?
Let's see, Mayweather versus
So it might have been
Corrales.
late '90 or maybe '99.
That fight was in 2001.
2001. Okay, so
Okay,
early.
so yeah, so Roy already was on his decline. What's up, Mr. Glue? Good to see you. Thank you. Roy was
So
on his
that's when it was his time to shine.
Roy was on his decline. So people talk about, like, I've heard Max Kellerman say, well, Mayweather and Roy were fighting, and when Mayweather and Roy were fighting, nobody questioned if Mayweather was better than Roy. And I love Roy, but Mayweather still was not who he is. I'm
No,
curious
Roy,
to see what would have happened if they fought if they were peaking at the same time. Now, you know me, I think Roy was still. I mean, nobody matched.
Yeah, and remember too, Roy was taking on all comers. His whole thing was unifying everything. He wanted everybody's belt. He wanted.
He was
all.
also just.
He was
Out. He had like I don't know much about cars, but whatever the dopest engine is, he had that.
Yeah. He was cars. He was cockfighting. He was rapping. He was rapping his way into the ring himself. He was a showman.
Oh, I meant you misunderstood me. I meant as inside, his engine was comparative to whatever the highest.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's what I meant.
Right. He was.
And so his
of his generation, and Floyd was the prototype of a supercar.
Right, which means his output and visually and everything you saw from Roy was just so far removed and above everybody else. So I think even if Floyd, 2005 Floyd was who he is in '98, Roy would still far surpass.
Still supersede, yeah. The only showman during that generation that may have been able to make a dent, an inkling of a dent in Roy's or rival his own showmanship.
I want to hear this. Prince Nassim was my second favorite fighter. He was my second favorite fighter. His power and his showmanship was next level, but not everything else.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Orthodox style, was very magnetic. It was very attractive to the fans, especially the casuals, who were used classic,
And Floyd and Prince were actually in the same weight division or within one division of each other, and they thought about fighting each other.
Absolutely.
Didn't happen.
Absolutely.
I can't see, knowing what I know now, seeing Prince lose to Barrera, I can't see Prince beating Floyd. I mean, he's just too defensively sharp. If he lands something...
There's no way. And even
but what if he lands? What if he lands one of those like leverage leaping in?
Yeah, I think Floyd still has enough recuperative. Look, I'd be hard pressed to think pound for pound punching. Yes, Hamed was right there.
Real quick, everybody watching. Hold on, sorry, Hayden. Everybody watching, the link is in the chat. If you guys want to come and give your opinion on Money May versus Pretty Boy Floyd, or Money May versus Floyd Mayweather versus Prince Nassim back in the day, or anything we're talking about, click that link. Okay, go ahead. My bad.
Yeah. Look, Floyd wasn't Wayne McCullough, right? Pound for pound, Hamed could punch, and he was up there at the top, pound for pound. But I'd be hard pressed to think, I think anybody'd be hard pressed to think that he hit as hard as Shane Mosley, or harder than Shane Mosley, or Oscar De La Hoya, or Canelo Alvarez. Again, you can build that body, but this chin is a chin is a chin.
And do you remember a fighter named Edwin Valero?
Of course.
So those of you guys watching, this is a bit of a, if you haven't watched him, look him up. He ended up dying, and I'll get into that in a second, but he was, if I'm not mistaken, was it 21-0 all knockouts?
Yes.
22-0?
Yes.
Maybe even 24-0 all knockouts. Venezuelan, ended up getting brain damage from a motorcycle accident because he was a nut job outside of boxing, and he was banned medically from a lot of U.S. From all the states. So he was only able to fight overseas the last 3-4 years of his career. Again, let me let this sink in. 24-0, all knockouts. He was a 35-pounder or 40-pounder? 40-pounder, right?
140.
40-pounder, all knockouts. You could look him up now. Guys from that era say that he was the hardest puncher. Mikey Garcia, you can look it up right now on YouTube, says that's the hardest puncher he ever got in there with. Southpaw, he was signed to fight Manny Pacquiao right before he died. He ended up dying crazy. He ended up killing his wife, stabbing her to death, and then hanging himself in prison. Talk about wasted talent. But that fucking guy, actually, apparently I shouldn't curse because it messes up the algorithm. I heard that. They literally, did you know that? No, literally, it detects
curses. This.
Yeah, so try not to curse too. You haven't been, but
AI will probably, yeah.
Yes, no, I've heard that. But Valero, man, picture Valero would have fought Floyd. Then what happens?
Yeah, I that he'd have to land flush, and Floyd, again, he's going to study a guy, and he's only going to fight him when it's opportune. Did Valero hit harder than Canelo? Floyd got hit by Canelo. His chin got checked a little bit by Canelo, but he took it.
Hayden, did Floyd get hit flush by Canelo? I don't think so. Everything was either a half block or you rolled.
Right. Okay. So that being said, do you think that Valero was that much better than Canelo? Skill for skill, right? Would he have been able to Floyd? So it's a matter, you can have all that power, but can you deliver it? If you can't deliver it to the target, and he's a heck of a target. That's guy's one target.
People talk about Canelo and Triple G's chin, but Floyd, and it's funny, I did a poll recently, or not a poll, I did a video outlining the best chins, and I didn't put Floyd in. And the reason I didn't was because his chin was more the art of not getting hit or rolling. I was profiling people who get caught flush and could take it.
Big George has to be on that list.
I didn't put him on the list. Oh wait, maybe I did. I don't even remember who I could only fit 5 fighters because I only have a minute to go, a minute in the reels, so I could only fit 5, even if I talk real fast. And I think George was one of them. Marvin Hagler, of course. Of course, there was a few, but Floyd. The few times he got caught flush, he had a normal chin, it looked like, when he got caught flush.
A good chin. If I had to grade his chin, I give him a B+. I give him a B+ chin.
B+.
Yeah. Huh. He's been touched on it. Manny hit him on it, and Manny has stopped many a bigger guy.
Remember that one shot, and then Floyd kind of stepped back. It was like a slight wobble.
Yeah, and then came back. Right?
Yep. Let's see.
Now, if it were about recuperative chins, I would have to put him in, pretty high up that list. Him, Felix, Trinidad, like that. Let me go to my canvas and have you running by the end of the round.
Absolutely. Let me go to my man, Mr. Glue Baby. He says Floyd versus Prince Nassim would have been a great fight, but why did it not happen? Well,
didn't.
I don't know. Do you know?
What I was hearing was that was it Warren, Frank Warren?
Well, here's what I'm thinking, and I want you to finish your thought. Floyd was at that point already, I think, 140, and
Right,
Prince Nassim, or 135 or 140. Prince was a 126 pounder. Prince
126.
is, and he's 5'4". So I think at that point Floyd had outgrown his early featherweight days. So that's why I think it didn't happen. But what do you think?
I thought it was Warren too that was saying that he didn't think that was a great matchup and wanted him to stay low. He didn't think he should move up so many divisions so quickly. And then they were scouting around some names, Junior Jones and they landed on Kevin Kelly.
Well, Kevin Kelly followed his ass to England, didn't he? That right?
Well, yeah. And I think that was part of the promotional gaff of it all.
They'd already been signed,
I
and
think
he
they
was
were already they were already in big talks, and they thought that would be a great way to market it. So he told their retort was, "We'll fight you in your backyard," and that's why the fight took place.
I mean, who didn't Floyd fight in his era that he should have, that we wanted to see?
Stevie Johnson, a little bit bad, southpaw, 5'4", from Denver, Colorado,
So
whose only loss came to Jose Luis Castillo at that point.
That's a boxing purist choice. Try and go a little more universal. Vernon Forrest, maybe. Vernon Forrest, maybe.
I think Vernon was a little too big, long at the time. And by the time Floyd had moved up, Vernon was on his way out. Remember, Vernon Forrest lost to the Nicaraguan, the crazy Nicaraguan,
Ricardo
Mayorga.
Right, but that was one of those weird things because Mayorga, the only reason Mayorga is a multimillionaire, the only reason is because Styles Make Fights, was able to beat Vernon Forrest. Because every other
fights with Oscar De La Hoya,
every other champion he fought, he lost.
Fights with Shane Mosley, so he got all that money from those.
And
fights.
he got not only that, didn't he fight Vargas too, Fernando Vargas?
He did. So all of those fights were because, as you say, his win over Vernon. But not for nothing, he was very competitive in moments against Mosley. He was very competitive in moments against some of these fighters. So he wasn't really a fluke. He wasn't a polished guy, but he wasn't really a fluke. He was a genuine tough guy.
He was a wild dude. You know what I mean? He was a wild.
He was great.
Yeah, you know what Mosley told me recently? I was watching, scrolling through Instagram, and a clip comes up of when, I don't know if you remember this, when Mayorga slaps Mosley's girlfriend on the ass. Yeah. Right. It was his girlfriend at the time. And then she's like, why don't you put, and it was all staged.
I thought so. It
completely staged. I was like, I would have killed him. And Mosley's like, nah, that was. Huh?
It was a total WWE moment, but it sold the fight. It absolutely sold the fight.
And well enough where most people haven't, you didn't think it was staged. When I told you just now, you put two and two together, but it came off pretty real.
I thought it might be. I wasn't sure. So they were convincing enough for me to buy into it enough.
Right.
The same Mayorga and Oscar De La Hoya's wife at the time. He had words with her, and Oscar, was like, "Oh, I'm gonna give it to him for that." It became the theme.
I don't mind
boxing's great bad boy.
I don't mind stage stuff like that because because the fights are always 100% everything real, authentic, right? The fights are always authentic. So building it up, whatever. He said, a matter of fact, Mosley told me, I think he said he's friends with him to this day, Mayorga.
It's got to be an interesting friendship, I don't know how much of that is satire and stage in terms of his persona either. I know he did have legal troubles in Nicaragua, and he had been arrested a few times and things like that. So I don't know if he just likes living a little wild or if all of that is his persona.
Right, right. No, yeah, it's hard to tell. But you know that era, man, with Floyd's era. I mean, can we think of a more competitive, better welterweight era in history?
Or junior welterweight. I
Right.
mean,
Well, I always tell people, and I'm glad you said that. I hate when people today say, "Oh, like they talk about Tank and Devin Haney. Well, they're in different weight divisions. What are you crazy?" I'm like, 5 pounds, 5 pounds. So I'm glad you said that. So you're right. But can you think of a more competitive era?
no, no. To me, that was boxing's golden age, and in every division, save cruiserweight, right? We had a lot of really good little men coming up at that time. Again, we can go back to Brian Valoria, we can go back to Johnny Tapia and Danny Romero, all these 122-pound guys, bantamweight guys, and bring it all the way up to 135, 140, Shambe Mitchell and Hugo Pineda and Chop Chop Corley
There's so
Zabuda.
many. But if you think about, so let's think. So Floyd
Heavyweight.
Mayweather, right at his peak, we had now I think right Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, how come him and Trinidad never fought, or why was
Well,
that never even
Floyd
discussed?
didn't turn 147 until after
That's
Trinidad
what it is.
moving up. And remember, they fought that middleweight round robin, uh, where it
That
was
Hopkins
Trinidad,
one.
Hopkins, and
That wasn't the middleweight. That was a 154 round robin, wasn't it?
Joppy. No. Joppy 160, Hopkins 160, right? So it was
Oh, De
160.
La Hoya was 160 for that.
De La Hoya didn't fight in that one.
So when when Hopkins came down and started fighting De La Hoya and fight, that was 54,
It was after the tournament.
and that was at 54.
No, 160.
You sure?
Remember, yeah, Oscar De La Hoya got it to be able to fight Hopkins. He fought Roman Karmazin at 154, moved up, fought Felix Sturm, got a gift decision against
I
Felix,
remember that.
and
Yep.
then fought at 160. I think
You're
he
probably right.
paid attention to how tough 160 was. Squeaking.
No, they fought at 155 and 156, each of them. So it was like a catch.
De La
I think it was
Hoya
a,
and
yeah.
what
De La
did he
Hoya was
fight Sturm at? Wasn't that 160?
who?
Felix Sturm, Sturm.
That was at 160. But for
Okay.
Hopkins, I remember it was 154. That was 160. So we went back down because he was fighting at the time. I remember, I hate Larry Merchant, but the one thing he said, which I agreed, was when he was like, "Don't you feel kind of embarrassed that you're going down to 154 and beating these guys?" And he was like, "No, man,
You could wait.
that's only
Wait.
yeah, but Hopkins is 6'1". He should have been a 75 pounder, which is what he ended up being when he stopped draining himself.
Look at when he beat Tarver. The man who knocked out the man. He went and knocked him out. He went and stopped him. So
did he stop Tarver? No, he won a decision.
No, he beat him up. He
Yeah, it was a decision. He dropped him.
Yes.
He dropped him.
Like in the 11th something, right?
Something. He dropped him. And, I never liked Hopkins, not as a person, but as a fighter because he bored the crap out of me. But since Tarver knocked out my favorite fighter, Roy Jones, I want anybody who fought Tarver, I want them to lose, to beat Tarver.
I tell you.
And it was surprising.
Eric Lucas could have done it. You had a few guys that gave him fits, but Tarver's a solid fighter. But look pound for pound, ended up at heavyweight.
I was surprised when Hopkins was able to beat Tarver because Hopkins was old.
Old in years for boxing, but remember, he spent a lot of his life in prison and never really he didn't have that kind of mileage. He ate well, he took care of himself, he rested well, and he's always lived a really, really primo, clean lifestyle that, he didn't party, doesn't gamble, doesn't do a lot, and still to this day, he lives a good, healthy lifestyle.
He does. So, hey, what's up, Kalia World? How you doing? Yeah, man, it was such a golden era. I mean, even the heavyweight division was, all the divisions
loaded. And, you had guys that, if the guys at the top weren't there, would have been, they were right there. David Tua, he was an uncrowned heavyweight champ as far as I'm concerned. Dominic Quinn, uncrowned heavyweight champ. And then you had guys who proved the theory that if you could stuff lighter weight division skill into a heavyweight body, even a small one, Chris Bird, you could go up there and win a heavyweight title. You had guys like Ibiabuchi, who was that close on the precipice.
I just interviewed him, by the way. Everybody watching, did you see? Did I tell you about that?
You told me about that. Yeah, yeah.
I interviewed him. It's on my YouTube. Now, unfortunately, today we live in a very current world, so most boxing fans could care less about an old fighter, but the purists and the people in our age bracket, they do care. Interesting interview. He goes on a lot about his legal problems and all that, which I get because it's been a real problem for him. But check it out. It's on the YouTube. It's on my videos.
I'd like to tell your viewers that a lot of times people complain about the fights that don't get made. And that was the thing about that era. If you want to do yourself a favor, go back and look at some of these fighters we're talking about. The fights got made. Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya got made. Oscar De La Hoya, Pernell Whitaker got made. All these guys, Danny Romero, Tapia, Albuquerque rivals, got made. Ivan Robinson, Arturo Gatti. Ivan Robinson was, one of the more underrated guys of that era. Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti. We saw fights that, the matchmakers just gave us wonderful, legendary fights.
People wanted to prove that they're the best. So they weren't worried about being, I always say this, I call it the A-side, B-side bullcrap. They weren't worried about their ego being bruised and saying like, oh, I'm going to concede a couple negotiation points. And if I do that, well, now I guess I'm saying I'm not the A side and I can't do that. So a lot of them would rather just not fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about now? What about now? So Teach says, what about now? Well, that's what I'm saying, Teach. Now people, they protect their ego and their or just even their ego. Like even people who've lost.
I think those are one and the same. If you have an O, you feed your ego, you've got bragging rights. If you have an L, a lot of times people don't care who that L was to. You're a bum in the sport. And I think boxing fans tend to hold their athletes to a higher standard. You look at MMA, if a guy has an L and it's a legitimate L to a great fighter, he still has his fan base. No one's calling him a bum. If you look in tennis, race car driving, it doesn't matter. These guys, they win and lose all the time, and nobody takes away their greatness.
Right.
Here,
and this point here that Teach makes, I was about to say this, promoters, managers are also restricting their boxers. I was going to say promoters and managers are in the ears, advisors, they're in the ear of the boxer, and they're basically pushing their narrative, which is make the most money possible with the least amount of risk, because it's fighters don't duck other fighters. They don't get scared, but they are making business decisions that are a lot of times being maneuvered by their managers, by their advisors, and so forth.
Absolutely agree.
And now then we end up not getting the fights we want to get because of that.
Too much risk, too little reward, things like that. We can go back to the whole debate of Devin Haney not getting a shot at Lomachenko at the time, and I think smartly so. It was too much risk, too little reward at the time.
We wouldn't have got Crawford and Spence if Spence didn't kind of back off of Crawford. Yeah, because Crawford, no disrespect, he's the best fighter in the world pound for pound, but he was like, I don't want to say he was being a diva because I don't know if it was a diva, but I feel like he legitimately just didn't care if he had that fight. His ego was like, no, I'm not making any concessions. If this isn't totally even, I'm not fighting this guy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, back to the original, circling back, I'd have to go with Money May over Crawford. Just firmly plant that in. I think it comes down to the quality of opposition.
Right.
What's on Floyd's resume and what's on Bud's resume, two entirely different things. Era for era. Coming back to that was the era.
That was the best era. And
now, if we had Crawford and put him in that era, could he have developed that? Sure. But he's fighting to his era.
We don't really know what Crawford can do because he hasn't been tested enough by any he's not been tested by a generational talent. He's been
Right.
tested by a couple possible future all-time greats. Possible? No, not all-time greats. Excuse me.
All
Hall
time,
of Famers. Possible
all
Hall
time.
of Famers, but no all-time greats and no generational talents yet.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that he won so convincingly against Errol Spence has a lot of people being like, well, people, what's it called? Recency bias. It's a lot of recency bias. They think he's the best thing ever because he
I
just
think that's well put.
dominated, right? He dominated this fight that was so supposed to be
Oh,
so evenly matched and anticipated.
but I think that Spence was tailor made for him. I really do. And when a guy's just got a guy's number, I don't care if those guys fought 100 times. I think he wins 100 out of 100 times. I think that
Right.
Spence did exactly what Spence always did, and he did nothing special, nothing different for Crawford. Crawford's got way more way more dimensions than Spence has. What Spence and I won't call him a one-trick pony, but if your tricks are working, why develop anything else? And they were working and working well. They just Crawford had to learn so many other things, and he did. He had all of them on display in that fight, and there were no answers. Going back to the corner of Spence too, we've got to look. It wasn't all Spence. He went back and got nothing viable to take into the middle of that ring to change anything that he was doing.
True. Maybe he couldn't have. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't have it in him. I
I
don't
don't
know.
think. I mean, there are a lot of things, and excuse the reasons. Potato, potato. I just don't know that he has that kind of versatility at this point. And post, traumatic accident, if he could make those, I don't know that he's the same fighter. I still didn't, pre-accident. I go back and look. I think developmentally there were times where they could have done some things, but again, it's old dog new tricks, right? It's really difficult at a certain point to change a fighter. These aren't heavyweights that came in late in the game, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, whose learning curve is tremendous at a later stage in their lives because they can do that. These are guys that have extensive amateur pedigrees, have been developed over time. They've got a lot of mileage on them. It's going to be difficult to untrain and retrain in the time they have left.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe we should wrap it up. This is
Yeah,
a good first run.
I think it was great. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
I think I'm gonna stick to newer topics because I feel like telling you, man, people these days they don't really like this old school stuff that you and I like. So I'm gonna see how
I
we
like
do
them
with. I love it, but I guess more engagement would probably happen with newer topics, unfortunately. But
both.
maybe we'll do a
But guys,
balance of both.
I tell you, they should listen to what you're saying and go back and watch some of these fights because they, and don't look for the result. If you don't know enough about the fighters, you don't know their histories, just go watch the fights. Don't go look up their box rec and get their records first. Don't see who won the fight. Just go watch it purely and enjoy yourself because there were some fantastic
I
stuff.
know, and you
I
got
say, was a real wild card as a
and
one.
people have YouTube now, and YouTube. I mean, if we would have had YouTube in our time, like they have every fight at the edge of their fingertips, any fight they want to see. Imagine if we would have had that in the '90s. I would have been like,
I'd never have left the house.
I know, but too late now. Well, anyway, all right, man. Thanks for joining, and let's do it again soon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, my man.
All right.
Peace out, everybody. All right.